The ceremony hall of the Valorian imperial palace stretched before Marcus Chen like a cathedral made of living crystal. Bioluminescent veins pulsed through the walls in rhythms that matched no human heartbeat, casting shadows that danced to an alien song. Marcus stood at attention in his worn combat fatigues, still bearing scorch marks from the battle 3 days prior, acutely aware that he was the only human in a room filled with hundreds of Valorians. He'd been told there would be a reward, a medal perhaps, maybe a promotion that would mean nothing once he rotated back to human space, something symbolic that he could show his grandkids one day if he lived long enough to have any. The Valorians around him stood nearly 8 feet tall, their skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with their emotions. Currently, the patterns showed reverence, curiosity, and something else Marcus couldn't quite identify. Their crystalline eyes, faceted like gemstones, tracked his every movement with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Emperor Vorthalin entered through a doorway that simply grew from the wall, the crystal parting like a curtain. The Emperor's presence commanded silence. His luminescent patterns blazed gold and crimson, colors Marcus had learned meant authority and importance. Behind him walked a figure that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. Princess Lyrakai. Marcus had seen her exactly once before, through the scope of his rifle, 3 days ago, as Krell shock troops dragged her toward a transport ship. The Krell Dominion had been at war with the Valorian Empire for 2 generations, and capturing the Emperor's only daughter would have broken the Valorians' will to resist. Command hadn't ordered Marcus to intervene. His squad had been on reconnaissance, strictly observe and report. Engaging would have meant breaking cover and risking a diplomatic incident with a species humanity had only just begun to understand. Marcus had engaged anyway. What followed had been the longest 40 minutes of his life. 12 Krell warriors, each bred for combat, each outweighing him by 100 pounds of bioengineered muscle. Marcus had used every trick the UNSC had taught him: guerrilla tactics, environmental advantages, and the one thing that always surprised aliens about humans: sheer, bloody-minded stubbornness. When his ammunition ran out, he'd used his combat knife. When that broke, he'd used his fists, rocks, and at one memorable point, a Krell warrior's own severed arm. By the time Valorian reinforcements arrived, Marcus was barely conscious, held upright only by the adrenaline still flooding his system. The princess had been safe, clutching the rifle he'd pressed into her hands with instructions to shoot anything that isn't me. Now she glided across the crystal floor toward him, and Marcus couldn't help but notice that the simple combat perspective hadn't done her justice. Her bioluminescent patterns rippled in shades of silver and deep blue, creating constellations across her skin that seemed to tell stories. Her eyes, the color of Earth's oceans, fixed on him with an expression he couldn't read. Emperor Vorthalin's voice resonated through the hall, translated in real time by the neural implant behind Marcus's ear. Soldier Marcus Chen of Earth, you acted with honor beyond the requirements of duty or alliance. You risked your life for a daughter of Valoria when you had no obligation to do so. You fought with the ferocity of a storm and the cunning of our ancient warriors. The debt we owe cannot be measured in medals or rank. Marcus's stomach dropped. He'd seen enough alien movies to know where this was going, and none of those endings were good. Therefore, the Emperor continued, in accordance with the ancient traditions of our people, we offer you a reward befitting the service rendered. We offer you our greatest treasure. He gestured to Princess Lyrakai. We offer you our daughter to be your life partner, your mate, your companion for as long as you both shall live. The hall erupted in that strange Valorian applause, a harmonic humming that made Marcus's bones vibrate. Every eye in the room watched him with approval, with joy, with expectation. Marcus felt his carefully maintained diplomatic composure cracking. "Your Majesty," he said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper, "with all due respect." "What?" Princess Lyrakai stepped forward before her father could respond. Her luminescent patterns shifted to colors Marcus's implant unhelpfully translated as amused and determined. When she spoke, her voice carried a musical quality that human vocal cords could never replicate. "You seem surprised, Marcus Chen." "Ma'am, Your Highness, Marcus struggled to find words that wouldn't start an interstellar incident. "I expected maybe a medal, some kind of certificate, not a person. You're not a reward, he gestured helplessly. "You're a person, the princess. This is the concept so strange to your people?" Lyrakai tilted her head, the gesture remarkably human despite her alien features. "Among Valorians, when one saves the life of another, a bond is formed. When that life saved is of significant importance, the bond must be honored at the highest level. You saved not just my life, but my honor, my future, the future of my people. How else should such a debt be repaid?" Marcus looked at the assembled Valorians, at the emperor whose expression remained unreadable, at the princess who watched him with those ocean-deep eyes. He thought about the cultural briefings he'd slept through, the xenoanthropology courses he'd considered optional, and the mounting horror of his situation. "Your Highness, I'm honored truly, but I can't just accept a person as a reward. Humans don't do that anymore. We have laws against—" He stopped himself before saying slavery in the imperial palace. "It wouldn't be right." "So you refuse?" The emperor's patterns shifted to colors the implant translated as confused and disappointed. "No, I mean yes, Marcus took a breath. "Can I speak freely, Your Majesty?" "You have earned that right. I didn't save the princess for a reward. I did it because it was the right thing to do, because she needed help and I was there. That's what humans do, at least that's what we're supposed to do. We help, not because we expect payment, but because it's right." He looked at Lyrakai directly. "You're not a reward, you're not property. You're a person who deserves to choose her own path, her own partner, her own life. I won't take that choice from you, no matter what tradition says." The hall fell silent. The humming stopped. Marcus wondered if he just committed some sort of blasphemy that would get him vaporized by palace security. Then Princess Lyrakai did something that transcended species barriers. She laughed. The sound was like wind chimes in a summer breeze, musical and genuine. "You truly are as strange as the reports indicated," she said, her patterns now showing colors the implant labeled as joy and respect. She turned to her father. "Did I not tell you, father? Humans are not like the other species we've encountered. They operate on principles that sometimes defy logic, yet produce results we cannot ignore." The emperor's patterns shifted, thoughtful. "Indeed, Marcus Chen, you have presented us with a paradox. You performed a deed worthy of the highest honor, yet you refuse the honor we offer. You claim my daughter is not property, yet our traditions demand a bond be formed. How do we reconcile this?" Marcus felt sweat trickling down his back, despite the palace's perfect climate control. "Permission to make a suggestion, Your Majesty." "Granted." What if the princess and I just became friends first, got to know each other? Maybe she could teach me about Valorian culture and I could teach her about human customs. No marriage, no life bond, just friendship. Then if somewhere down the line we both decide we want something more, that would be our choice. Both of our choices. Lyrakai's patterns rippled with an emotion the implant couldn't translate. She approached Marcus, close enough that he could see the individual crystalline structures in her eyes. "You would be content with friendship, nothing more." "I'd be honored by your friendship, Your Highness. Anything more than that isn't my choice to make alone." She studied him for a long moment, then turned to her father. "I choose this human's wisdom over tradition. I choose friendship, freely given, over obligation." Her patterns blazed with defiance. "If that makes me less Valorian in the eyes of the court, so be it." The emperor's patterns cycled through several colors before settling on something the implant translated as proud and surprised. "You have your mother's spirit, daughter. Very well. Marcus Chen, you shall become a friend of the imperial house. You shall teach us about humanity, and we shall teach you about Valoria. No bonds, no obligations, beyond those that friendship naturally creates. The court's humming resumed, though more subdued now. Marcus felt the tension drain from his shoulders, replaced by a different kind of nervousness. He just rejected an alien princess in front of her entire court, suggested a completely different arrangement, and somehow hadn't been executed for it. Only later, as he was shown to quarters far more luxurious than any barracks he'd ever occupied, did he allow himself to consider what had actually happened. He'd been offered a reward he couldn't accept, in a way that violated every principle he held dear. And somehow, through honesty and a stubborn refusal to compromise his values, he'd gained something potentially more valuable: genuine friendship with an alien princess and her people. His communicator chimed. A message from Princess Lyrakai. Tomorrow, 800 by your timekeeping, I will show you the Crystal Gardens. Bring questions about my people and prepare to answer many about yours. This friendship you proposed, I find I am curious to see where it leads. Marcus smiled, typed out a confirmation, and lay back on a bed that adjusted itself to his human physiology with unnerving precision. 3 days ago, he'd been shooting his way through Krell warriors to save someone he'd never met. Now he was preparing for a cultural exchange with an alien princess. Somewhere in some cosmic record of human achievements, this had to rank among the strangest. But as he drifted off to sleep, Marcus found himself looking forward to tomorrow. Not because of duty, not because of reward, but because he'd made a choice, a human choice, to value a person's autonomy over tradition. And somehow, that choice had resonated across species barriers. That was the thing about humanity that always surprised the galaxy. They fought like demons when they had to, protected the innocent without thought of reward, and stubbornly insisted on treating people as people, regardless of whether those people had 2 legs or 4, skin or scales, Earth origins or stars beyond counting. The galaxy was vast, filled with species of incredible age and wisdom, but humanity brought something different to the cosmic table: a refusal to compromise on the basic dignity of sentient beings, even when it would be easier, even when tradition demanded it, even when refusing meant turning down an alien princess. As Marcus slept, Princess Lyrakai stood in her own chambers, her patterns cycling through colors that represented emotions she was only beginning to understand. She had been offered as a reward, expected to fulfill a duty. Instead, she had gained something she'd never anticipated: a friend who valued her choices, her autonomy, her personhood above all else. Tomorrow would bring the Crystal Gardens, questions and answers, the slow building of understanding between species. But tonight, both human and Valorian contemplated the strange, wonderful possibility that sometimes the best rewards were the ones you couldn't plan for, the ones that emerged from simple respect, honest communication, and the courage to defy tradition in favor of something more genuine. The galaxy, vast and ancient, watched this small interaction between soldier and princess with the patient interest of ages. Another thread had been woven into the tapestry of human-alien relations. Another story would be told in the halls of the Valorian court, and eventually, in human bars and briefing rooms across known space. The story of the human soldier who was offered a princess as a reward, and chose friendship instead. It was, the galaxy would eventually agree, a very human thing to do.